a framework in which the states have the ability to participate both as leaders and as partners with the federal government, however, is going to take all of our best efforts if we're going to make the kinds of wrenching reductions that we need in carbon dioxide that are actually going to get us close to where we need to go to stabilize our climate. You can't get to the 80% by 2050, and even that is questionable, whether we can actually do it without the cooperation of sources that are exclusively under federal jurisdiction no matter what, and major changes in the electricity grid that will go across state lines and other actions that are needed can only really be effectively taken when the federal government moves into the picture here. So I don't think that there's too much debate about the notion that we in California want the federal government to come in and take an active role on our behalf. But I think there still is a lot of debate about the question of how it is they can do it. And I know there's going to be discussion about this later, but I do want to put my marker down here in saying that while we understand that in many respects climate change is distinct from any other environmental problem that we've ever tried to tackle in a regulatory manner before, the fact is that the Clean Air Act remains the best model and the best tool that we have today to take on a problem of this kind. And while perhaps not a complete solution, it offers a good basis from which we don't have to completely reinvent the wheel. And again, as an example of a very dynamic and constantly evolving interaction between state actors who have direct responsibility under federal law for delivering pollution protection services to their citizens, and a federal government which retains exclusive jurisdiction over some of the major sources of pollution. This has turned out to be, if not perfect, and it certainly isn't, far and away the most successful example of a policy set at the federal level that has actually delivered concrete, measurable, durable results in terms of measured air quality that people today breathe. The framework for cooperative federalism, where states are required to meet a minimum federal standard that prevents the so-called race to the bottom, but that also allows and encourages states to race to the top, is exactly what we're trying to achieve when it comes to programs that are going to enable us to make serious reductions in emissions of greenhouse gases. We also know that we need the federal government's presence to support the kind of massive investments in research and deployment of new technologies that are going to be needed to make the energy transformation that is called for in order to achieve massive reductions in CO2 and reduce our petroleum dependence. Research, manufacturing, and deployment of green technologies can also generate good jobs, and of course that has not escaped the attention of those who were drafting the stimulus package, and it's one of the things that now has, I think, finally caught the imagination of most of the public as well. But these are not just flash-in-the-pan, innovative companies that will go on to turn into other things and make their investors rich. We also believe that these industries are going to be viable, strong, and stable industries for the long term as well. We have a good base here in California of vibrant technology clusters that have emerged in areas like advanced biofuels and renewable energy, as well as information technologies. And of course, the optimism that we have as Californians about our ability to invent solutions to problems is one of the reasons why the California legislature was so bold as to pass the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, AB 32, which for the first time anywhere at the state level, set a mandatory cap and a requirement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2008, California attracted about 57% of the nation's clean tech venture capital, $3.3 billion, which is a lot of money, although there's more out there that we would like to go after. And these are the kinds of opportunities that we want to aggressively compete for. But we will have to compete, and other states are also eagerly jumping on board and finding ways to make their states more attractive places for these kinds of investments as well. Within that kind of a framework, we need the federal government, as is common in our system, to provide a framework, a backdrop, if you will, that will encourage that competition to be healthy and to be clean, to be fair, but will, in general, set a bar that will require all of us to move forward. It's happened before. It's worked with our vehicle standards. It's worked with energy efficiency standards, and we see no reason why it won't continue to be effective in areas of advanced fuels and technologies and new policy initiatives as well. Success in the fight against climate change is going to also, though, require that states do things that are hard. And in our state, one of the things that's been the hardest has been to get a grasp on our sprawl, on the mechanics that seem to make it very difficult for us to set any kind of policies that encourage dense or efficient growth. We need policies in the area of housing and transportation, both of which the federal government plays a very major role in, that will work in favor of smarter growth rather than, as they do today, creating incentives for exactly the wrong kind of growth to occur. This is going to require leadership and change at the federal level. It's not just about the federal government telling states to do the right thing. It's also about the federal government practicing what it preaches itself. We need a federal government that will coordinate the efforts of its own agencies to promote more effective policies in the area of clean energy that will actually get beyond the small pots of money that get divided up into 50 little units and funneled out, through state agencies, and that actually set up the kinds of larger scale grant programs that states can compete for that have worked well in many other areas as well. This is going to be the driver of our future. It's going to be what gets us out of our current economic doldrums. But it really does require the federal government to take a look at its role as a partner in these efforts. Adopting the necessary framework for an effective climate program is not going to be politically easy. We saw that a year ago. That was before the national elections, but even so, it was pretty clear when you saw how the votes in the Senate lined up and then saw the completely different approach that was being taken in the House of Representatives, that saying the time has come and acknowledging that climate is the overarching environmental issue of our day does not mean that we're actually going to get to legislation that will work.